So, the other day I was reading The Kite Runner by Khaled Hossein for the first time, and I was for the millionth time confronted with Wuthering Heights as an intertext in the book I was reading. So, in The Kite Runner, the protagonist Meyer, who has felt like a third wheel in his family and kind of ostracized because he is more interested in literature than the masculine pursuits that his father wants him to be interested in. He meets his future wife while she's reading, you guessed it, Wuthering Heights, and they immediately have this sort of understanding between each other, this string that connects them. I've been convinced for a while that Wuthering Heights must be one of the most referenced intertexts in literature in the last 100 years or so, and this conviction has borne out of the numerous times where the book I was reading or the movie I was watching or the TV show I was binging included Wuthering Heights as an intertext. So today in this video I'm trying to find out why Wuthering Heights? Why does this book keep haunting me the same way that Catherine keeps haunting Heathcliff?
Cathy! Come in! Cathy, come back to me! Oh, Cathy, do come. Do once more. Oh, my heart's darling. Cathy, my own. My... Cathy!
Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights was published in 1847, and it is this particular Bronte's only published novel. As of 2025, the movie has been adapted in 15 different movie adaptations in multiple languages and in multiple countries. Obviously now, as of 2025, there is also the now infamous Emerald Fennell adaptation coming out next year. Along with these more direct forms of intermediality, I hope I'm saying that right because I just learned that word like a week ago. Along with these more direct forms of intermediality, the novel appears as a diegetic element in a lot of works, so as a literal book in the world, in the story world of the text, and on a more allusional level in many works of literature and film. Bella Swan's favorite novel, In Twilight, is one of the latest library loans of Carrie Bradshaw in the first Sex and the City movie. It is the required reading for Phoebe and Rachel's book club in France.
And it takes place on these really creepy moors in England, which I think represent the wildness of Heathcliff's character. I totally get symbolism.
In short, this gothic tale, if you're not super familiar, is a frame narrative, so a story within a story about two families and the drama the relationship between them produce. Although riddled with complicated bonds, the one most remembered is the one between Heathcliff and Catherine. Heathcliff is adopted into Catherine's family as a boy, and his life is made difficult because of the discrimination he endures because of his ethnicity. Heathcliff is described in multiple ways, one being a little Lascar or an American or Spanish castaway, a wicked boy at all events. Catherine and Heathcliff share a bond as children, and after Catherine marries Edgar Linton, the heir of the rivaling family, their relationship turns tragic in the very literal sense of the word. Primary narrator, who is Nellie Dean, and a servant to both of the families throughout the novel, is one of the only empathetic figures to Heathcliff. After Catherine's marriage, a daughter that is also named Catherine, by the way, and an eventual death. I should probably mention that this whole video is filled with spoilers, sorry about that. Heathcliff turns increasingly unhinged. I mean, he was unhinged before, but he really unhinges even more. He wasn't really dealt the best cards in life. Also, he's literally haunted by Catherine, so. Along with some amazing 19th century insults, the book contains some of the most romantic words ever put to page, in my humble opinion. I gotta mention one of the insults. One of my favorites is when Hindley, Catherine's brother, as in blood brother in this case, is cursing out Heathcliff. And he says, "Begone, you vagabond. What are you attempting to coxcomb, are you? Wait till I get a hold of those elegant locks. See if I won't pull them a bit longer." Because he's like, how dare you? But also, great hair. But when it comes to tragic romance, the best exchange has to be when Heathcliff learns of Catherine's passing and says to Catherine, "And I pray one prayer, I repeat it till my tongue stiffens. Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you. Haunt me then. The murdered do haunt their murderers. I believe I know that ghosts have wandered the earth. Be with me always, take any form, drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. Oh God, it is unutterable. I cannot live without you in my life. I cannot live without my soul." Bars, I don't really know what to say. So the material is good. I know, super unpopular opinion to say that, wait guys, Wuthering Heights is pretty good. But it is. But why is it that this particular text keeps getting referenced in the year of our Lord 2025 and beyond? And what do these references mean in context? I'm especially interested in why this novel in particular is so prevalent in a lot of teen media, geared towards women especially. I feel like we can find a pattern there. Like many later canonized or otherwise revered works in literature, Wuthering Heights was received with doubtful glares and accusations of sexual immorality. Because of this, Baldalou says, feminist critics have cherished Emily Brontë as a romantic rebel who made passion part of the novelistic tradition against the repressive conventions prevailing at the time. This rebellion had limits though, since there had to be a happy marriage at the end of the book, even in the case of Brontes. Nonetheless, there is a sort of tension between Heathcliff and Catherine that feels explicitly sexual and pearl-clutching inducing throughout Wuthering Heights. Not explicitly though, since it is the 19th century and female sexuality doesn't exist yet, as we all know. These feelings are expressed through words like quivering and shivering, suggesting that some feelings are definitely being felt. Jarvis argues that Victorian literature exhibits a sort of masochism, where language indicative of cruelty, particularly feminine, queenly cruelty, and language that describes equivocal states of being are combined. So an unnamed but definitely subtextually sexual tension arises when the female character encounters a forbidden, brooding, but also really hot guy. There's obvious connections to teen dramas here. Victorian times had a pretty rigid popular understanding of womanhood, as we might imagine. Pure womanhood, that is, the right way to be a woman, was defined by being untainted by sexuality and devoid of power. At the same time, society at large was burdened with the woman question. It's okay, now you want to vote and have bodily autonomy. That kind of goes against everything we've built so far here. All this combined has marked the genre of Victorian Gothic fiction with ideas of sexual repression. Emerging ideas of sexuality are repressed in the face of societal conventions. In the Gothic tradition, Baldalou says, the fallen woman or mad woman that arouse male fear and hatred must be ultimately punished or ostracized, while submissive women that behave appropriately are ultimately rewarded with praise, marriage, and sanctification. Such is the case with Catherine in Wuthering Heights. You would have a wild situationship with a dark, handsome stranger, but you gotta die at the end. Female characters have showcased rebellion against gender roles across literature of all genres through their chosen romantic relationships. This has allowed moving classes and choosing love above what you think you have to do as a woman. So you would think that contemporary media geared towards women who have a very good opportunity to use this intertext, that is Wuthering Heights, as a way to produce good feminist commentary. Right? Contemporary young adult media is no stranger to classic literary references or allusions. The works of Shakespeare have inspired many a romantic comedy, than Things I Hate About You and most recently Anyone But You being adaptations of Taming of the Shrew. So did you know that Heath Ledger and his sister are named after the Heathcliff and Catherine? I just found out that 10 minutes ago. The intertexts are really intertexting right now anyway. Vampire media also loves a gothic reference, since it is a gothic reference in itself. Previously mentioned Twilight references Wuthering Heights and Romeo and Juliet. Vampire Diaries also references Wuthering Heights, right at the beginning of the show, when the vibe is still good and Elena has interests and hobbies.
I can't believe she didn't use her real name.
All the Brontë sisters used pseudonyms. It was a time female writers weren't very accepted then.
Remember those times? I miss them dearly. Published fanfiction also alludes to forbidden love stories from literary classics. Tessa, the protagonist of After, the 2019 film, yes, we are talking about After, declares Wuthering Heights as her favorite novel. Isn't it crazy how much fanfiction has a grip on popular culture now? Like, I feel like all the time there's news of traditionally published fanfiction being turned into film. I wonder if that has happened before, where a fanfiction has major implications on society at large. I'm not sure. When it comes to referencing Wuthering Heights in a lot of young adult media, the reference is usually used to showcase the similarities or the differences between Catherine and Heathcliff and the main couple in the story. In Eclipse, the third book in the Twilight series, Keep It in I'm Human, Bella and Edward discuss the novel. Edward doesn't understand Bella's love for this book, since the characters are ghastly people who ruin each other's lives. Maybe that's the whole point. Bella thinks she likes the book because of the couple's love's inevitability. Inevitability. Keep it in I'm Human. Now, nothing can keep them apart. Not her selfishness, or his evil, or even death in the end. Later, Edward gives the book a second chance and says, I'm discovering that I can sympathize with Heathcliff in ways I didn't think possible before. Instead of making the connection between Edward trying to accept Bella's and Jacob's situationship going on there, and the connections with Heathcliff and Edward and Bella and Catherine, and then Edward, who Catherine ends up marrying, Bella's like, why would Edward ever empathize with the monster Heathcliff? Right. Another direct reference is made in After, where Harding, the male love interest with a troubled past and a leather jacket, quotes Wuthering Heights to the protagonist first during their first meeting, and then at the end of a college paper, I think. Yeah, great, crazy movie. Rather than questioning the moral virtues of Heathcliff and company like Edward does in Eclipse, Harding questions the concept of love altogether, deeming Heathcliff a fool for believing in it before meeting the protagonist, Tessa.
From Darcy to Heathcliff, I thought they were fools. That love was something fictional, only found in worn pages of a book. But that has all changed since I met my Elizabeth Bennet.
It would make sense, since Wuthering Heights can be read as having feminist subtext. The novel would be used for similar purposes when used intertextually. It's still clearly working in its original field, being a favorite of romantic literature and film still. It seems to me, though, that Wuthering Heights is used often to signal a character's general bookishness, or being an outsider, wallflower, that sort of thing. This is achieved with the book as a diegetic object, like I mentioned before, a literal item in the story world. The characters pass it down, they dog-ear its pages, or spot a like-minded individual because of the book. The other main use seems to be examining the romantic pairing of the primary text through Wuthering Heights on a thematic level. The love story is tragic, as can be in the case of Carrie and Big when she makes that comment about reading Wuthering Heights. Maybe the main character has to make a choice between two love interests, as in the case of Bella and Edward and Jacob. It seems, though, that the feminist and post-colonial undertones of the work seem to kind of take a backseat in a lot of these popular references. Brontë argues that in Eclipse, Bella is ultimately reinterpreting a classic and popularizing it by means of simplifying its thesis. What I personally really love about Wuthering Heights is that everybody is crazy. I already mentioned the great insults. Another one is flung out by Catherine Jr. to Heathcliff when she says, "You are miserable, are you not? Lonely like the devil, and envious like him. Nobody loves you. Nobody will cry for you when you die. I wouldn't be you."
Jesus.
I mean, Heathcliff himself goes on this whole quest to destroy the two families he feels came between him and his situationship. Like, the whole book is just discovering new layers of being a hater you thought never possible before. Kathy's also crazy. it's a segue. Kathy's also crazy. Complicated female characters tend to be labeled crazy, wild, witches, bitches, you know. Back in the day, women got labeled crazy for pretty much any rebellion against these rigid gender roles. Kathy gets labeled as a witch in Wuthering Heights because her passion for Heathcliff challenges ideas of traditional feminine morality, argues Ichikawa. Being boy crazy was transgressive. Heathcliff's wickedness in the novel is often thought to be a result of his assumed ethnicity. Both characters have this label of crazy, and it's precisely this wickedness that I really like about the book. A tragic hero being horrible to everyone around him because he can't be horrible together with his horrible lover. Like, that's what fiction's all about, in my opinion. It seems kind of strange then how a lot of these aspects are rarely included in Death when Wuthering Heights is used as an intertext or otherwise referenced. And you might be thinking, well, dumbass, all of the examples you have used are bad. Like, Meyer explained once that vampires turn white as a part of their transformation regardless of their race. The entirety of the last book of the Twilight franchise is a pro-life panel. Like, were you expecting intricate racial commentary from this person? And to that I say, you are absolutely correct, and I can't really argue with that, but I'm still kind of curious why these flat interpretations of the novel are so rampant in romantic media and young adult media especially. Not that Brontë is the only victim of interesting interpretations of their work. I mean, Frankenstein is another one that I feel like the collective understanding doesn't have a collective understanding of the book at all. So let's go through some findings so far. How is Wuthering Heights used in a lot of this young adult media? Because once we start to examine the medias where Wuthering Heights is referenced, you can kind of see shared details.
So, Phoebes, what is the book about? I thought you said you read it in high school. Well, yeah, but then I remembered I started it, and then there was this pep rally, and I was on top of the pyramid. But anyway, what's the book about?
So, the works often seem to focus on romance plots that are in some way complicated. A love triangle, a death, a class difference, what have you. The stories are told through mostly a female perspective. The male love interest is tall, dark, and handsome. Not that often dark, though. Even in live action adaptations, it's kind of crazy. Pursuing a relationship with this man is often a transgressive act, like we've said. Some sort of rebellion. On the flattest level, the dark, tall, handsome stranger has a motorcycle or something. Vampires are often involved, as is in the Gothic tradition. The book, like we said, often signals shared values between two characters, as was in the case of the Kite Runner that I mentioned in the beginning. Then in a lot of teen media, they tend to have a flat understanding of, or actually no understanding of, racial complexities and otherness that are present in the book. Because remember all of like the Confederacy stuff in the Vampire Diaries? It's so present, yet they never explicitly talk about it. It's so crazy. Bonnie Bennett, you will always be famous. This overall lack of understanding would probably explain why Heathcliff's identity is pretty rarely the primary object of these references. So, we gotta talk a little bit about the new adaptation, right? That's probably why you clicked on this video if you're here. I didn't want to make it the focus of this video because I, as a rule, don't get angry about movies that I haven't seen and haven't even come out yet, you know? But the whiteness of Heathcliff seems glaringly obvious in a 2026 adaptation of Wuthering Heights, because in English adaptations, very rarely is Heathcliff actually portrayed as a person of color. So you would think that in, 2025, we would be sensitive to that. And another note that I made while watching the trailers is that the sexuality in this movie seems to be pretty over the top, in your face. My theory is then that the movie is gonna say something about something. Maybe something about sexual repression, commenting on the Victorian tradition there. Or maybe something about adaptation as a medium, about bad adaptations. Either way, this adaptation seems to be swinging the opposite way, as a lot of the examples I've mentioned before. Boy craziness is transgression, and being excitingly immoral seems to be the front of the film. But like I said, the movie hasn't come out yet, so I'll refrain from further judgment yet. Maybe it will fall flat on its face and it actually has nothing to say. I love Wuthering Heights, and I wish its craziness was more cherished overall. It is interesting to see how the novel is in conversation with many medias today, even if I don't exactly like the conversations that it has, I guess. Either way, you can't really deny that Wuthering Heights is captivating. Love it or hate it, the novel has resonated with audiences in one way or another for almost 2 centuries. I love stories about horny, crazy, imperfect women. I wish the world loved them just as much as me.